So, I'm going to make a two-part video series, maybe three-part, on Buttwink specifically. And I've been having some conversations lately, specifically revolving around squatting and deadlifting, hence all of the videos on them. But I was asked recently, hey, can you take a look at this gentleman's squat? He seems to be butt-winking, and I don't really know how to fix it. I said, sure, let's do it. So from that conversation, it got me thinking about putting down some thoughts on paper, which I have, and now I want to put them into a video format so that if I ever have questions like this in the future, I can just simply link to this three-part series. First part, we're going to talk through some of the common ideas behind Buttwink, what could potentially be causing it, what do people suggest is causing it, why they're likely incorrect. Second part, we're going to talk through some common, let's call them motor patterning issues that could be going on for the hips, for the torso, and for the lower body specifically, and how those can lead into Buttwink. And then we're also going to talk through some genetic components that you may not be able to change, but that may be a factor in your Buttwink. And then we're also going to talk through some cueing and some coaching that may be contraindicated for specific athletes based upon how they present in terms of their biomechanics. Third thing that we're going to go through in the series is some specific screens that you can use on certain body parts, and for screening out by yourself those specific body parts to determine, is this the limiting factor in my squat, and if so, how do I go about addressing it? So let's chat then about some common ideas behind Buttwink and what folks think is causing Buttwink. If you're not familiar with Buttwink, this is all it is. It's simply going from a extended position, or excuse me, from a neutral position to a flex position during a squat. So it's normally around parallel or just below, where the person then loses control of the pelvis. It tucks. That's all it is. Nothing too scientific. But first thing that we need to differentiate is there's a difference between going from an overextended position to neutral during Buttwink and going from a neutral position to a flex position during a squat when you Buttwink. First one isn't ideal, but if it is very, very small, then don't worry about it. It's probably minutia. If it doesn't cause any pain and you don't feel like it is changing your motor patterns during the squat, don't worry about it. But if, for example, let's say you're butt-winking and at that specific spot you keep losing tightness, or you're shifting to one side or another, then that's an issue. You need to address that. Second one becomes more of an issue because you could run into disc issues, given that now you're changing the position of the spine under load, specifically a compressive force down through your spine, or should I say an axial force straight through your spine. So, because of that, it's definitely something that you want to address. And in the second video, I'll go into more reasons why that might be happening. But what people commonly associate Buttwink with is tight hip flexors and tight hamstrings. So, because of that, they're thinking, well, if someone presents in this lower crossed position, as it's commonly referred to, it was a physical therapist by the name of Vladimir Yanda, I believe, and he came up with this idea on the lower crossed syndrome, where you have this large arch in your low back, the hips are tilted forward, so then people think, well, your hip flexors are just short, and your hamstrings are just long. Well, not long, but they're tight. They feel tight. Why? Well, it simply could be because you have this change in your pelvic position. So do this. Arch your back as hard as you can. Right? Now, reach forward and try to touch your toes. What happens? Well, your hamstrings get really tight and you're never going to get close to your toes. Why is that? Well, simply because now you've changed the position of your pelvis, and because your hamstrings connect right at the bottom of your pelvis, you can feel up kind of high into your tailbone, your butt bone area. They're right diagonal sacrum or your tailbone, go down diagonally, find those two bones you sit on, that's where your hamstrings attach. Anyways, so because you've now changed the position of your pelvis, you have run out of hamstring room, but if I want to touch my toes, all I have to do is allow my pelvis to tilt underneath, give a little exhale. Easy as that. So, in the end, the answer is not to stretch the hamstrings and the hip flexors. The hamstrings are perceived as tight because of a positioning issue, not because of an actual length issue. So, let me explain. What I mean is that you don't have an actual shortening of the hamstring. It's not like your hamstring is cramped up permanently and you need to, quote unquote, stretch it out like a rubber band. Your muscles are dumb. Your muscles are just controlled by your central nervous system. As soon as this thing sends out a signal, that muscle is going to contract and it's going to fire. In the case of your hamstring, as soon as your pelvis tilts back, your hamstrings are going to start to fire. Why? Because if they didn't, and you arched your pelvis too far, you could potentially go about injuring your hamstring by putting it under too much tension. Your body's very smart, and the whole goal is homeostasis, keeping you in this state of balance, this state of normal. Because of that, it doesn't want you to get injured. So what is it going to do? It's going to tighten up on the hamstring, and it's going to tighten up on the hip flexors, because you don't have stability within your core and within your glutes. So something's got to take over and stabilize the pelvis. Moral of the story is, if you have Buttwink, the answer is not to stretch the hip flexors or the hamstrings. So, part one, we're done. Heading over to part two, let's do it.